Coming back before we leave math, I think we spoke a bit about math before, and I started to speak about some kind of philosophical kind of questions about. And
the beauty of math.
The beauty of math, and there is this quote from Kant, Immanuel Kant, philosopher. He basically says that is it a thing in itself? So the question is then, is math a thing in itself? And I guess one way to phrase it is, do you discover math or do you invent math? Is it something that already exists that you discover, or do you actually create math? What do you think?
That's such a good question. I think as an individual, you, as an individual, if you like mathematics, you discover it as you go along. I'm reminded of this. I was taking a course for my supervisor, and I think this was probably the point when I decided I wanted to do whatever I could to do a thesis for her. She had, it was a course in complex analysis, and there was an engineering student who wanted to know how to calculate the residue of something. And she said, oh, I don't remember. And then she started from scratch. She was like, okay, so f is a function. And then she started doing the whole calculation to understand what the residue was. And I remember the engineer being like, oh my God, she's so stupid. She doesn't even know the answer. Whereas for me, this was the right way of doing it. It's like, if you're a really good theoretical mathematician,
you derive it.
Yeah, you can derive kind of anything from just like the axioms that define what a point is and a line is. And from there, it's like, it's this beautiful world that just unfolds.
Yeah. And just a bit more philosophical things. If you take like the Gödel fork, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
No,
it was this kind of thing where a lot of mathematicians were really upset in the 1930s or something, because he proved that mathematics is not complete and consistent. And
but
it's similar to the halting problem, if you heard about that. So,
no, sorry.
So Alan Turing defined this kind of thing where he could mathematically prove that it's impossible to prove that if a computer program will halt or not in some way. And he does that by simply having this kind of self-reference kind of thing, and he can show it's impossible. And basically that was Gödel's theory as well. He can easily say that anything that have the right axioms, like the piano axioms or these kind of, if you can define natural numbers, you can show that any kind of language in math that can handle that is either incomplete or inconsistent.
Nice.
And that basically means math is incomplete.
Yeah.
And that's very upsetting, right? to some mathematicians at least. Right?
Sala, please disagree here. We want argument if you think it's bullshitting, because I can't follow this right now.
Yeah, no, I'm reminded of this. There was this big discussion when the Hilbert axioms were created. So one of the axioms was, I think, the parallelity axiom. So it says that it's possible to create two lines that are parallel and therefore will never meet. But it turns out that if you treat that as, if you can create a universe where that happens, then there must also exist a universe where they always meet. So every single parallel line will meet at some point. And then I think it's quite fun to think about, like, I guess it's Einstein who talks about the compactness of the universe. And that would be exactly the explanation to why you could never have two parallel lines that never meet, because the universe is compact. So at some stage they will come back.
Right. Interesting. It's super interesting. And you can continue the discussion from Einstein to quantum theory and whatnot, and say, is the world really non-deterministic? Something that I have a really hard time accepting.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that, or?
No, I have an anecdote to to come with. Apparently, like just the recent days, there's some Israeli security expert who has written a book, and he said that aliens exist and we're in touch with them, and there's like a council of aliens that humans are part of. Super cool. So we'll see.
But you said before, I think it's before we started, like one of the things that really got you into math, or actually that you stayed in math, was the beauty of it. So how would you describe the beauty of math to someone who's not into math? How would you try to put words to, what do you mean with that?
Yeah. So I think the further you come into theoretical mathematics, the more philosophical it becomes. And when you're working in kind of, this is going to sound really pretentious, when you're working in higher dimensional places that you can't, I mean, you can draw because you have some sort of intuition about how stuff works, but you can't really see it because it's too many dimensions for you to be able to perceive.
So you're now talking mathematical dimensions. Yeah. And how many dimensions do we perceive? 3?
Yeah, probably 4 because
4, time, 3 plus time.
Something like that. But I think...
And in mathematics, you can...
you just abstract it to loads of different dimensions. And as a theoretical mathematician, you don't care about those dimensions, what they actually do. They just exist. There's like K dimensions. But I think it becomes, I think my brain is wired so that it feels very calm when it's allowed to think about mathematical questions. Because it's filling my brain with a lot of information so that I can... it's like going into this beautiful world.
It's almost meditation.
Yeah.
But so when you say philosophical, in what way do you think, could you explain that in another way? So is it like really, you're getting down to very fundamental questions, I guess, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because I didn't do like hardcore analysis. And if you do that, then it's like sitting and computing very hard and trying to be innovative about what kind of tools you could be using to connect things to. But with geometry, it's at some stage, you usually go back to, wait, what is a point? And it gets like,
what is the point with a point?
Yeah. And you have to really rely on the absolute foundations of the sort of reality that you've chosen at some stage.
So you get very soon to a principle level.
Yeah.
So you're fundamentally, what's my principle? And then it becomes values. Do I believe in this principle?
Yeah. Do I believe that 2 lines will be parallel or not?
So that's the philosophical topic that at some time, and how can I now prove or disprove this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how can I prove a philosophical theorem at the end?
Yeah, a little bit like that. And it's very sort of, I feel like it's very sort of creative. When I look at those of my friends that were PhD students and have stayed in research, a lot of them are very, very sort of cultural. Mm. They're very different from the sort of stereotypical engineer. Mm. It's very much more sort of almost like creating art.
Yeah, so it's the art part of science, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's super, it's beautiful.
Truly.
Is there any mathematical art you can buy?
Yeah, but you have a passion for data visualization as well, and that can be very connected to art. I remember in Spotify we had actually this data art competition.
Yes.
So it had a condition that you can create a beautiful kind of data visualization, but it needs to be some kind of utility. You have to at least understand what it means and can interpret something from it. And that limited a bit, the creative aspect of it. But they had this kind of amazing kind of particle flow kind of visualizations, which looks awesome and super beautiful. And I think data visualization is an art form.
Now I get goosebumps. Right?